Well, for more on the situation in Iran, 1 year on, we're joined here in the France 24 newsroom by Shirin EBADI. She's an Iranian lawyer and a former judge known around the globe for her work to promote human rights and democracy. She was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize back in 2003. Ms. EBADI, thanks very much for speaking to us here on France 24. Now, first off, we know that Mir Hossein Mousavi and other opposition leaders canceled the demonstrations on the anniversary of the election. What does that suggest about the opposition movement as it stands today in Iran?
During this last year, the amount of the government violence was extremely high. Whoever went to demonstrate was either killed or arrested. The only way of preventing these assassinations was to renounce to the demonstrations. But people go on protesting by other ways. The distance, the gap between the population and the government is increasing daily.
So you say that people are protesting in other ways, that there is an opposition movement. What are those other ways of protesting?
One of them is the mothers, the women whose children have been killed or arrested. They dress in black, and every Saturday they gather in a park with the pictures of their children. Another example is that the birthdays of the prisoners are celebrated behind the walls of the prisons. They organize great picnics with flowers and sweets to celebrate their children. Internet and weblogs are also a very efficient way of go on protesting. Documentary films are made, theater plays are performed, and there are also other films that are on the web.
Now, we know that before last year's poll, many members of Iran's intellectual elite were already living in exile. When the violence happened last year, many more of them moved abroad, went into exile. Is there an official opposition movement abroad? And if so, what are its goals?
The Green Movement is democratic, and it develops in networks and in a horizontal way. It doesn't have specific leaders. The whole population is committed to it, and that's precisely why it's so strong.
Now, we spoke this week to the Iranian Foreign Minister, Manucher Mottaki. He said that the government did release some of the opposition figures who were in jail, that they released them recently. Let's take a listen to some of what he said.
Even the leader accepted forgiven of the main number of the people who have been in the jail. You have heard last week about, I think, more than 80 people have been released. It means government or the system is not going to combat with the people. But where somewhere violation is there, it should be stopped. It is a general decision.
So the foreign minister there saying that some of the detained opposition members have been released from jail just in the past few weeks. What do you make of that statement?
The people who were released had to pay very high cautions. And now these are just, they are threatened because they may have released aid the people, but they have arrested far more people. They do release a few people, and then they replace them by new prisoners. And the only reason why they do that is that the prisons are full. And unfortunately, the number of prisoners is much higher than the number that the prisons can actually contain. Unfortunately, I have to remind an arrestation that happened 2 days ago. Mrs. Narges Mohammadi, who's one of the great figures of Iran's opposition, was arrested at midnight and was taken away in front of her 3-year-old twins. And the judge had just asked the Secret Services to arrest her if they wished. So it's not even the judge and the justice that made the decision, which shows their dependence to the information and secret services.
Do you personally feel under threat from the Iranian regime?
I do. I've been threatened several times, but this is not new. It started 16 years ago. And lately, I've been threatened more specifically. My husband, my siblings have been told that I would be fined wherever I go, but this doesn't matter. I must carry on working.
Now, we know that the UN Security Council voted this week a fresh round of sanctions against Iran's disputed nuclear program. Do you believe that sanctions are the right strategy for the UN to be taking on this issue?
These sanctions are not correct if they harm the population. But those that have been voted recently are related to military issues. And people's lives are not restricted by them.
All right, thanks so much for coming in to speak to us. Shirin EBADI, she's an Iranian lawyer and 2003 Nobel Peace Laureate. Thank you for your time.